Good afternoon, esteemed members of the committee. First and foremost, I wanted to go ahead and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share with you my research. Once again, my name is Andre Houghton, and today I'll be presenting my research. It's titled High Performing Young Educators Exodus to Charter Schools. So I wanted to go ahead and jump right in and begin with a short plug about who I am. So once again, my name is Andre Houghton, and I'm currently an assistant principal at Hogg Middle School here in the Houston Independent School District. As far as a little bit about myself and the different organizations I've worked with, I was a Teach for America 2010 core member. I taught for 2 years at Fondren Middle School. I've also spent the last 5 summers working as a curriculum specialist for Teach for America. So in this capacity, I deliver all the whole group professional development to the incoming teachers. I've also worked with HISD for a number of years as a teacher, now as an assistant principal, and I've also delivered professional development to a crop of their new teachers. Last but not least, I spent 1 year working as a teacher for KIPP, running a social studies department and delivering professional development for their teachers as well. My dream job, of course, would be to be an author, education consultant, as well as a professor. I think all of this plays a critical role in not only the research topic that I've chosen to present, but also in my own analysis of said research. So this is a short plug about myself, but let's go ahead and jump right in. I wanted to introduce you to my research problem. And so I knew that I wanted to spend some time looking at charter schools, right? Being a member of Teach for America, a lot of my colleagues have gone to charter schools and worked there. I've also worked at a charter school for 1 year. And then I have friends on the other side of the spectrum who absolutely detest charter schools, right? And so I'm sort of stuck in the middle. A group of my colleagues, they love charter schools, think they're the wave of the future. The other group of colleagues think they are the worst thing to ever happen. But I knew that the topic of charter schools was a hot one. I mean, in the last 15 years, the number of students attending charter schools have gone from less than 2% of our current student population to upwards of 6%. What this really means is over the last 15 years, we've had a bump from 1,500 charter schools up to 6,000. Now, when we think about the charter school debate, it really is that, a debate, right? Some people wonder, are charter schools even legal? Other people say, are they effective? Some others say, you know what, they're extremely effective. We need to understand why they're effective to make traditional public schools even better. Another question that sort of popped up to me was, who is working at all these charter schools, right? Well, many of their employees are young and potentially effective teachers who've actually left traditional districts. That to me seemed like a phenomenon worth discussing and researching. And so to continue on my research problem, I thought about all the school districts around the country that have teacher vacancies. Then I considered the fact that teacher prep programs are actually producing less graduates. This is a potential problem. It means that there are traditional districts out there who are dealing with a lack of teachers as well as a lack of people who want to stay in traditional districts. I think this graphic illustrates it better than I could, honestly, right? Charter school growth is exploding. We need to be studying this dynamic. Now, there are some studies that have been addressing the issue of charter schools more generally. And I would sort of bucket these different studies into 3 main categories, right? People have studied the teacher attrition rate of both charter schools and traditional public schools. There's also been tons of studies talking about charter school effectiveness. And last but not least, there are studies out there that really focus on the professional climate and the curriculum control that charter school educators have versus the same idea in a traditional public school. However, when you pour through that literature, you realize that there are a few deficiencies. First and foremost, a lot of the studies address the idea of what it means to be a charter school teacher, as well as the benefits and drawbacks of those charter schools. But there is a glaring omission here. There are far fewer studies that address the why. In thinking about this amazing demographic, the young, highly effective teacher, why are so many moving from traditional public schools and into the charter world? Now, when I think about this research that I conducted, I think about its impacts in policy, right? The goal of this research is twofold. One, I want traditional districts to understand why they're losing their best and their brightest, and the hope is that they would change some of their policies to hopefully keep more of this demographic working for them. But I also think this research impacts the charter school movement as a whole. I imagine there are tons of charter schools who want to continue to get the best and the brightest as far as teacher talent, and they need to know what it is they're already doing to attract this talent so that they can continue to attract that talent. So hopefully this research will have a practical component as well. And the reason I went with this particular image was this was a group of the educators that I trained with when I was a Teach for America Corps member, right? So this was us in summer 2010, right before we joined the classroom. And what's so striking about this is I can point to at least 5 of us in this image who were ranked as highly effective in the state of Texas, but only one of us is still in a traditional public school. So I think this research has real world applications for sure. So now I wanted to dive into some of the literature that I took a look at before I began my research project. Charter schools in general, right? So yeah, when we look at the studies that broke down charter schools big picture, there are a few ideas that came to light. Teachers now have more choices in where they work, right? The traditional public school or the private school is not the only option. Now you have public charter schools. And many studies have sort of analyzed the variables that impact those choices, big picture. Another area where there has been significant research was the area of salary and benefits, right? So some of the key takeaways here. Charters generally pay their employees less, but because they have more freedom in the pay scales, they are able to pay select employees a higher salary. This could potentially be something to attract young, highly effective teachers. Another fact that I was able to pull out from some of this research, is that charter schools generally offer some untraditional benefits, for example, nutrition advice, yoga retreats, and daycare. Yet again, these are potential variables that might attract and retain young, highly effective educators. So when I think about my research, the literature did yield some things to consider. Last but not least, a lot of the research did talk about professional climate and curriculum concerns. These are areas in which I do feel that there will be an impact as far as young, highly effective teachers and where they want to work. Key takeaways here. Charter educators generally enjoy their professional lives. This is something that I think is going to come out in the research for sure. Charter school teachers also have more freedom in what and how they teach versus traditional public schools. The research also suggests that charters have more control over discipline procedures, and that the rapid growth of charter schools means more leadership opportunities for younger educators trying to move up. And of course, that's hitting the demographic that we're studying, right? Those young, highly effective teachers. So let's kind of bring this all back together, right? There are some things that we do know. The research is very clear. We know about charter school effectiveness, and we know why teachers leave education in general. But there is a critical missing piece of the public. Why is a specific demographic leaving? Why are young, highly effective teachers moving from traditional public schools to charter schools? This, my friends, is the big question. Now, in order to study this effectively, I went with a qualitative research design. And so you're going to see that my research was conducted in a natural environment. Myself, as the researcher, I do play a role in the data. I'm also pulling from multiple sources, right? So there's going to be interviews with my subjects. There's going to be videos of them teaching. There's going to be questionnaires and surveys. And I try to provide a holistic account of the phenomena. Okay? It's going to be a multi-case study. And so I'm going to look at several different young, highly effective teachers and sort of chronicle their experience, why they decided to leave a traditional placement in favor of a charter school. My role as a researcher is going to be a big one in this particular study because I've got to consider who I am and my various experiences as I sift through this data. So I wanted to be very open and upfront about who I am. First and foremost, I myself have been a young, highly effective teacher that went to a public school and then worked at a charter school, right? I cannot divorce myself from this role. Here in this image, you see me with my very first group of munchkins. But and the first picture, they are in a traditional public school. But I have also worked at a charter school. Here you see 3 more munchkins at my charter school. I cannot forget my experience here. And then last but not least, I've also worked as a coach for new teachers. And so in this image, you see myself along with some of my other colleagues as we train new teachers. Our new teachers went primarily to traditional placements, but I'd say maybe 30% have gone to charter school. And so I know these things going in, and so I've got to be mindful of them as I work to collect the data. So I went ahead and collected the data, and I wanted to be very clear about how I did so. So the setting was charter school sites in the city of Houston, coffee shops, other work sites. My participant group was chosen from a sample group of 25 teachers under 35 who have been labeled highly effective by HISD before moving to a charter school. From that group, that sample group, I pulled 5 participants, and they were pulled by myself as well as my advisor, and we looked at several different variables. And then last but not least, I gathered my data via field notes. Some things to be mindful of: validity and reliability. The data will be triangulated through the use of multiple sources, and the goal here is to establish similar themes. And then last but not least, I'm going to have a group of non-researchers look at the study, sort of as a way to peer debrief it and see if they're able to pull out those similar themes as well. Reporting the findings. I tried to be as in-depth as possible in terms of the analysis. So as a reader of this study, you're going to be given quotes, dialogue, participant reflections, as well as follow-up responses from myself. And then last but not least, I went ahead and provided thick descriptions of the participants as well as the setting. To wrap my presentation up, I wanted to go ahead and provide a list of various references that I used to create the project. And finally, I need your help. I want to make sure this project is the best project that it can be, so I appreciate any and all feedback. Thank you so much for your time.